Come on. You're live now, Joe.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. My name is John Walsh. I'm Chairman of the Planning Committee of this municipal year. The Vice Chairman, Councillor Ayoub, and members are online, supported by officers from the Planning Department, Committee Administration and Legal Departments, and they will speak as necessary. Remind members, please, that the chat box is there for indications of wish to speak, and that those are then a public document, so there is a permanent record of that fact. Can I welcome this afternoon Councillor Allen, who has rejoined the committee. Item 1 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I don't have any indications. Thank you. Item 2, urgent business. Nothing has been brought to my attention. Item 3, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. We've got apologies today from Councillor Darvish and also from Councillor Howarth, but Councillor McKeon is here in her place, and also from Councillor Wilkinson, but Councillor Newall is here in his place.
Thank you very much. Item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. These have been circulated.
Move, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Any dissent? Thank you. We come then to item 5, the planning applications and the report of the Director of Place. Can I outline the process dealing with these applications? They will not be dealt with in the order in which they are on the agenda. We were dealing first of all with the application for Montcliff Quarry, followed by Central Street, Lincoln House and Mansell Way. Each application will be presented and introduced by a planning officer. We will then invite a ward councillor, where we have an indication the ward councillors wish to speak, who can speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. And following that, the opportunity for an objector to speak as registered for a period of up to 3 minutes, and that is an absolute 3 minutes, after which we'll ask them to take questions from members of the committee. Following the objector, we will take any supporter registered to speak, who again will have 3 minutes absolute, and the opportunity to take questions from members. Following that, members of the committee who wish to ask questions of officers will have the opportunity to do so before we go into a general debate. And I would normally invite the ward councillor, if there is one present, to open that debate. So the first application is application 05250/19, page 110 in the bundle, and it relates to Montcliff Quarry. Helen Williams, I think, is presenting this report.
Thank you, Chair. The proposed 3.2 hectare extension would be at the northwest corner of the existing quarry and would be roughly triangular in shape, created through a series of benches. Members will note from this schedule supplementary information that an additional 23 objections.
Sorry, before you go any further, I was asking for the slideshow, please, so that members can see the site as you're talking. Sorry about that.
No problem. I'll continue, sorry. Members will note from the schedule supplementary information that an additional 23 objections have been received at the time of writing that document. Around 20 further objections have been received overnight, which means about 92 objections have now been received to the proposal. The principal purpose of the development is to release further high quality dimension stone to be used mainly in local construction. The proposed end date for mineral extraction within the proposed extension area is the 31st of December 2039. Upon cessation of extraction, the site will be fully restored within 2 years of the proposed end date. The restoration would comprise the regeneration of the benches with grass, heath and scrub, and creating a low-lying semi-aquatic habitat on the lower level. The application site is allocated as an area of search for sandstone within the Greater Manchester Joint Minerals Plan and also the Council's Development Plan. The Minerals Plan makes a presumption in favour of sustainable minerals development, and the NPPF advises when determining applications that great weight should be given to the benefits of mineral extraction. The application site is located within the Greenbelt. Greenbelt policy states that mineral extraction is not inappropriate within the Greenbelt, provided it preserves openness and does not conflict with the purposes of the Greenbelt. For the reasons discussed within the report, officers do not consider that the proposal would be an appropriate development. Separate from Greenbelt policies, officers considered that there would be visual harm to the landscape during the proposed mineral extraction phase. Montcliff Quarry already influences the landscape of the area, and it is recognised as an intrusive feature. The extension would result in the quarry being more visible from surrounding areas, particularly from surrounding public rights-of-way and the higher ground to the north. This harm will, however, be temporary in nature, with the proposed restoration helping the benches to better blend into the neighbouring landscape over time. Officers therefore advise that the harm should be given moderate weight in the overall planning balance. No additional HGV movements are proposed in addition to those already permitted for Montcliff Quarry, and as such, highways engineers have raised no concerns. The hours of operation, drilling and blasting are proposed to be conditioned in line with the existing permission for Montcliff, and the proposed operations in terms of noise, dust and vibration impacts would need to continue to adhere to the existing permitted limits and conditions. The same conditions would again be imposed on this decision should the application be approved. These recommended limits are in line with the guidance contained within National Planning Policy Guidance for Mineral Extraction. 1 hectare of the site is located within an SBI and the site neighbours a SSI. The site comprises rough grassland, which is visibly different to the neighbouring protected Blankets Bog moorland. Natural England have raised no objection to the proposal in terms of its impacts on birds and other fauna and the neighbouring SSI with regards to dust and hydrological impacts, and have recommended a number of conditions. The proposed restoration scheme, which includes heathland regeneration and semi-aquatic habitat, would lead to an eventual biodiversity net gain, which has been welcomed by Natural England and the Ecology Unit. A 5-year aftercare scheme for the restored site is proposed to be conditioned. To conclude, officers considered that the great weight to be attached to the proposed mineral extraction outweighs the moderate harm to the landscape and the minor harm to biodiversity during the operational phase of the development. Members are therefore recommended to approve this application subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Can I invite ward councillors now to speak? First of all, Councillor Sylvester. Councillor Sylvester, I do not need to remind you that you've got 5 minutes to address committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, sir, and members of the Planning Committee. I have objected to this planning application as a ward councillor for Horwich North East Ward, in which this application site falls within. Over 90 letters of objection have been received, and as a ward councillor, I am supporting my residents with those objections. The application site is within the Greenbelt, the Winter Hill and Smithills Moor site of biological importance, Grade A, and the Upland Moorland Hills landscape character area, and adjacent to the newly created West Pennine Moors site of special scientific interest, declared by the Government's Natural England Board on the 19th of July 2017. The SBI was extended in 2008 to include Montcliff Quarry. Section 9 of the National Planning Policy Framework seeks to protect Greenbelt land. The Government attaches great importance to Greenbelts. The fundamental aim of Greenbelt policy is to prevent urban sprawl by keeping land permanently open. The essential characteristics of Greenbelts are their openness and their permanence. Paragraph 90 confirms that mineral extraction is not inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, provided that it preserves the openness of the Greenbelt and does not conflict with the purposes of including land in the Greenbelt. I believe that this application to extend the area of the quarry into open greenbelt land will most definitely not preserve the openness of the greenbelt, as it will take away the existing openness of the land within the area proposed to be extracted. Indeed, the openness will be completely eradicated under these proposals, as the land will literally be taken away because it will be extracted altogether. Therefore, I believe the proposals are contrary to Section 9 of the National Planning Policy Framework. Similarly, the newly created West Pennine Moors Site of Special Scientific Interest confers special legal protection on land contained within it. Mike Burke, Natural England's area manager for Cheshire to Lancashire, said, "The West Pennine Moors are truly special and wholly warrant this SSSI status. It confers special legal protection and recognises the national scientific importance of its mosaic of upland habitats. I believe that the proposals would conflict with the purposes of the West Pennine Moors Site of Special Scientific Interest to protect and enhance the wildlife importance of the area. I believe that the proposals would therefore be detrimental to the objectives of protecting and enhancing wildlife importance and detrimental to the area of the SSSI and site of biological importance and the upland moorland hills landscape character area. I have been contacted by residents living along George's Lane, Arcon Village, the Bottomouth Moor area and from the Foxholes area, all with very valid complaints about the activities of Armstrong's in terms of planning enforcement breaches, noise, dust, the speeding of Armstrong's wagons along Chorley Road, the state of George's Lane because of Armstrong's wagons churning away the road surface. Unfortunately, all I hear from my residents in Horwich North East is negativity against Armstrong's as a company. It has a dire reputation with the residents who contact me, and I really have to question, based upon everything that I hear and what is fact, if this company can be trusted when they have, without any planning permission, constructed buildings, tarmac large areas of their sites and done things without going through the correct planning procedure in the first place. There is actually no need for this application to be approved because the sub-regional land bank for crushed rock is already exceeded for at least another 10 years. The application should therefore be refused because at the present time refusal would not contravene Bolton Council's commitment to maintain an adequate land bank of aggregates, to make a contribution towards the maintenance of Greater Manchester share of the regional production of aggregates. Basically, this application is not needed. Applications to extend quarrying at this site have in the past been refused, so there is a precedent set that this application can also be similarly refused. Application number 3920291 for the extraction of quarrying operations and associated landscaping works was refused in December 1991, and application number 41400492 for the extraction of quarrying operations at Montcliff Quarry was refused in February 1993. I therefore believe that a recommendation for refusal for this application can be made. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Sylvester. Can I invite Councillor Brady, Ward Councillors, to speak, please? Councillor Brady, again, you have 5 minutes to address committee.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just waiting for the red light. Yes, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, committee. The Armstrong Group have a number of businesses operating out of the quarries, all using Chorley Road and George's Lane to access. Montcliff Quarry, the subject of this application, has had extension after extension. According to the history appended to this application, it was 2005, then 2011, then 2021, and now this new one taking it up to 2039 with a further remediation period. Needless to say, should this extension be granted, it will be 2039 at the very earliest before operations cease. The volume of HGVs is said to be within the existing permitted movements of 100 in and 100 out Monday to Friday, 50 in, 50 out on Saturdays. Pilkington 1 and Pilkington 2 quarries are next door. Pilkington 1 is exhausted, but carries permissions to receive 2 million tonnes of inert waste. Pilkington 2 is as yet unmined, and that quote is taken from the Armstrong Group website. Permission was granted in 2011 for Pilkington Quarry extension, with movements of 120 HGVs in and 120 out. There's an application pending for the retention of a concrete batching plant in Montcliff Quarry. This development requires a maximum of 30 in and 30 out movements of mixer vehicles every day, plus arrivals of other aggregates and ground granulated blast furnace slag. So the true total of possible HGV movements along George's Lane and Charlie Hall Road is approximately 250 in and out every day. That's from the full operations carried out by A. Armstrong Group. The officer's report mentions an existing routing agreement within the unilateral undertaking for the quarries. This restricts the passage of HGVs past the parish church and the parish primary school. It's not enforced and it's frequently breached. And it only applies to HGVs operated by Armstrongs, not other hauliers. Lee Lane passes through Horwich Town Centre. It's a narrow road with very narrow footpaths, some less than 2 metres in width. The passage of HGVs through the town centre creates issues for pedestrians using the town centre to shop and will harm the regeneration of the town centre should it continue. The officer's report also states the landscape will be harmed, but tries to soften the blow by saying it'll be temporary. 14 years or 15 years is not temporary. The quarry face is visible from miles away and it dominates the landscape. This extension will mean additional benching cut even higher into the hillside. The drawings appended to the application show the height of the benches as 345 metres AOD. That's just 18 metres the size of a house lower than Rivington Pike. Dust, noise and vibration are maybe to be expected, but not to the extent that residents lose their right to the quiet enjoyment of their properties. The West Pennine Moors have triple SSI status. The number of visitors increases year on year, all drawn to the natural beauty and wildlife. Does that not merit protection? In considering this application, I would ask members to consider the mitigation measures to address the harm acknowledged in the officer's report and the comments by my ward colleague, Councillor Sylvester. The cumulative HGV movements must be managed by a traffic regulation order, preventing HGVs turning right at the end of George's Lane using Church Street, Victoria Road, Lee Lane and New Chapel Lane as shortcuts. Enforcement of TROs is frequently cited as a reason not to apply them. That being the case, cameras must be ensured to ensure a TRO is complied with and to monitor the number of vehicle movements and ensure they are within the permitted limits. There must be mitigation to monitor the dust, noise and vibration, and there must also be screening to lessen the visual impact of the quarry face. Thanks members for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. We now have an objector to speak, Mr. Bustard.
Chairman, we've been advised that Mr. Bustard can't dial into the meeting for some reason. He's going to watch it at home from the web. He's not supplied me with a statement, so I think we have to just move on to Mr. Heffernan, the supporter.
Thank you for that. Mr. Heffernan, you now have got 3 minutes, please, to address committee, after which I will invite members to ask questions that may arise from your statement.
Thank you. The NPPF, NPPG, Bolton Core Strategy and Greater Manchester Joint Mineral Plan are not ambiguous in their support of proposals of this nature. There is a direction from central government to apply great weight to the benefits of mineral extraction, particularly to the local economy. Furthermore, a suite of supporting studies have demonstrated to the satisfaction of all specialist consultees that this development will cause no unacceptable harm to the environment, residential or public amenity. Where the need for mitigation measures has been identified, it has been provided, for example, through the provision of a vegetated landscape bund and hydrological barrier trench to protect the nearby West Pennine Moors triple SI. The site will provide biodiverse habitats upon restoration, and the final landform has been designed so as to assimilate into the existing landscape and not cause unacceptable harm during the operational phases. Montcliff and Pilkington quarries have provided the raw materials to build and maintain Bolton and its surrounds for well over a century now. In order for new forms of built development to match their setting, a continued supply of these raw materials is essential. In addition, and of no less importance, is the repair and maintenance of heritage assets, which the minerals would likewise facilitate. Considering Horwich Town Council's comments, the site is not contrary to any policy in the NPPF. However, the reverse is true. The NPPF expressly states that minerals extraction does not conflict with the purposes of the Greenbelt. Furthermore, a suite of supporting studies have shown to the satisfaction of all specialist consultees that there are no anticipated unacceptable environmental or amenity impacts as a result of the proposals. It is also critical to reiterate that there is no such thing as a land bank for building or dimensional stone supply. There is a recognised permanent requirement for the supply of building stone, not aggregates. Furthermore, the principle of the extension has not been refused previously. 2 refusals in the early 90s were in relation to aspects of the current site. The proposals were subsequently approved in a consolidated scheme in the late 1990s. The extension proposals will contribute to the ongoing security of over 200 jobs across the Armstrongs Group, which is an unequivocal boost to the local economy. Your officers have prepared a comprehensive report and left no stone unturned in their deliberation over the last 2 years. Furthermore, they have sought proportionate planning conditions to safeguard the environment and residents where appropriate, including, but not limited to, the requirement to submit detailed schemes for matters such as archaeological investigation, preventing dust emissions, and detailed landscaping. Their ultimate conclusion is, as a result, absolutely definitive and without caveat, a recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heffernan. I have a question, please, from Councillor McKeon. Councillor McKeon.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Heffernan, can I ask if the extraction of the stone will depend on market forces, and if it does, so does the extraction of the stone depend on market forces? And if it does, is it likely that the extraction will be complete at the date 2039 that we've been given, or might it be the case that the firm might ask for an extension at that time?
Thank you for the question, and that's a very common question with all mineral extraction. Ultimately, yes, market forces do dictate the rate of extraction, but as the sites of Montcliff and Pilkington have been long established, there's a comprehensive understanding of what the demand is in the region. Therefore, the rate put forward is as such until 2039. The potential to extend a site can never be excluded, and that's recognised in national and regional policy. But in this instance, as I said a second ago, with such a good understanding of market demands already in place, we can be fairly confident of the proposed end date being met.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are all the questions, or the only question I have for you, Mr. Heffernan. Thank you. We turn then to questions to officers. I have 2 members indicating to speak, but before I invite them, can I just ask of officers, I know we don't have a highway officer present, but it would be entirely feasible, subject to statutory process, to put a weight restriction, for example, from George's Lane, its junction with Chorley Old Road, through Horwich Town Centre to the Crown, except for vehicles needing to access that area. And such a traffic regulation order would be appropriate. Could officers confirm that for me, please? Highway officers seem to think it is, but I'd like planning officers to put it on record, please.
Hi, sorry, I was just waiting to go live there. I can't unfortunately answer that on behalf of highways engineers with them not being here, but if it is a weight restriction, I presume that could be something that could be delivered under a traffic regulation order. In terms of restricting vehicles from actually turning right, I don't think that in itself could be. But yeah, it's certainly something that we could go away and ask highways if that is a possibility or not.
Well, thank you for that. 2 questions currently for officers in that case. Councillor Hayes, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The supporter touched on it briefly, but I think, could we have a bit more information about why this application, which was made in January 2019, has actually been in planning for 2 years. Have there been a lot of negotiations going on? Perhaps we could talk a bit more about that.
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, originally there was quite a lot of toing and throwing between the applicant and Natural England. There was lots of questions about how the development would impact on the adjacent SSI, and plans and proposals were amended to address those concerns. So it has been quite a long process in that regards, to actually getting to a situation where officers were confident that an approval should be recommended to members. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Sylvester made the claim that there is more than adequate land banking, he called it, to meet the requirements of the Greater Manchester minerals policy. The supporter in his presentation said that there is really no such thing as land banking, and he referred simply to an overall quantity of stone. I wonder if officers can just clarify this situation, and if there is an excess, as Councillor Sylvester claims, does this have an impact on the application? Is it in fact a material consideration? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I was hoping to have explained it maybe a bit better in my report than the original report that was written for the last committee meeting. And I've tried to explain the situation, I think, in paragraphs 31 to 35. There is a land bank, but that is for crushed stone. So that is the aggregate that is, it's probably best explained, it's the material that's over the dimension stone that needs to be extracted away to get to the actual dimension stone. So there is a land bank for that. There isn't, as Chris Heffernan said in his supporting statement, there isn't a land bank for dimension stone. There's presumed to be, well, a presumption that there is a need always for sandstone, with it being needed for construction purposes. And as Councillor McKeon rightly said, that is dependent on market forces. So the land bank is just for crushed stone, and it's quite similar to our housing land supply, that it's a minimum, which means that once you've hit that target, it doesn't mean that you cannot go over that land bank total. You should get to that amount, but you shouldn't go, it doesn't mean you shouldn't go over. But there isn't a land bank for sandstone or dimension stone. Hope that explains it.
Thanks very much, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We now come to open the debate, and I'm going to invite the ward councillor according to normal process at these meetings. So, Councillor McKeon, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the difficulties with this application is the history, not simply of the quarries in this area, but of Armstrongs in general, and many of the objections that have been put forward reference situations that arose out of the facility that Armstrongs run on Chorley New Road. That facility is now closed, but there are obviously ongoing difficulties, and the fact that there are 3, I think now, retrospective applications indicates reasons why local people are suspicious of attempts by Armstrongs in this case to extend their operations. It seems to me that the main material issue here is landscape, and I would like to recommend refusal of this application on that ground. The Council's policy 08111 says Council will ensure that new development does not harm the landscape setting and protects views from public areas to the surrounding landscape. The landscape officers have mentioned in the report that the landscape will be affected. Now, the argument is that this will be mitigated by the fact that this development will be temporary. And I'd like to question that word temporary and say, what does it mean? The application asks for extraction until 2039, but Mr. Heffernan very reasonably has said that this actually may not be the end date, that it could go on further, and those market forces that we spoke about may mean that there's no need for stone for a certain number of years. So we're talking about 15 years, perhaps even longer. And there are many of us on this call and watching who won't be around in 15 years. So I think temporary is a questionable concept, particularly given the size of the area that potentially is going to be used. If you look at the map, the first map that we see on the slides, it's a considerable area, and it does border onto this very, very precious SSI area. So because of visual impact, because of the effect on the SSI and possible effect on habitat of wild animals and birds, it seems to me that it ought to be rejected. And I think that this is something that is really very, very important to the residents of Horwich and surroundings. The landscape, this whole area is very precious, very valuable. It must be protected. So I move rejection. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKeon. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to repeat what was said by the ward councillors. I think they've summed it up perfectly. But it is for us to decide if this application would constitute moderate harm, as is suggested by the officer's report, or in fact it would cause severe harm. This quarry extension would impact on the triple SSI conservation area, which is an area of outstanding beauty. Removing 2.75 million tonnes of stone with a maximum of 100 HGVs a day driving in and out. That's 200 HGVs a day driving past the nearby cottages and hurtling through the streets of Horwich town centre. This would cause gridlock and danger to the public. These are 100 vehicles. These vehicles they're using are the, if I look at Armstrong's websites, are the Scania P410 wagons. Now these weigh 9 tonnes each and can carry up to a towing capacity of 40 tonnes each. Now, to my calculation here, it's 100 vehicles weight at 49 tonnes comes to 4,900 tonnes, and coming back empty, 100 vehicles unlaid at 9 tonnes is 900 tonnes. So that's 5,800 tonnes of vehicles, you know, extra hurtling down the two main areas going through Horwich. I will not consider this as a temporary planning development, as officers have suggested, as this will go up to 2039. So I'd be happy to second Councillor McKeon's proposal for refusal, as its impacts on the triple SSI green belt, and I would, if Councillor McKeon is happy to do this, I would also like to add the impact on public highway as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Peel, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Some good speakers, and I think this is one of those applications where you can sense balanced arguments in terms of how officers have come to the conclusions in their recommendation. The starting point is it's a permitted economic activity in the Greenbelt, but that cannot be the end point, because obviously mineral extraction, which is permitted in the Greenbelt, it is there for the economy, has to be weighed up against the effects that causes. I mean, we've heard arguments about whether or not the crushed stone or the aggregate is exceeded. We've heard arguments that there is ample supply in the economy, and I think our planning officer actually clarified that to say, but that doesn't mean to say there's an upper limit. That does worry me. If that is national policy, that does worry me, because in most other industries, you would basically carry out the activity you need for the base of the economy, not simply just have no maximum upper limit and continue extracting the materials that you need without any necessary end product, as is driven by market forces, as Councillor McKeon said. So that whole issue does leave a big question mark on it. But I think the most important thing is it appropriate to the Greenbelt? Well, you can do this type of activity in Greenbelt. It's clearly there in government policy, but the point of the Greenbelt is that the openness aspect, the character, is protected. If there are arguments that are put across that any development that's considered appropriate is going to detrimentally harm and affect that openness aspect, then that is a major consideration. And we're in a lucky situation in some regards with this, in that we already know the answer to it, because we already have the existing quarry in situ. I mean, this could be seen as an extension to the existing quarry, or it could actually be seen, depending which way you look at it, as a brand new application for a new quarry based upon the sheer size of the land that's being considered. So members need to consider that as well. But because we've got the existing quarry there, we know the harm that it's caused to the openness and aspects of the landscape, and we know the harm that it's caused to local residents. You don't get 92 people objected in what is a sparsely populated area in general to something, unless there is a very strong sense of feeling about it. And I think it is one of those situations where I've certainly been aware all of the time I've been on the council of issues that Horwich residents have raised about the quarry, have raised about the company and other activities. So I think for the applicant to say that they're happy that the application won't cause harm to local residents, again puts a big question mark on his opinion to say that, because conversely there are plenty of people, including, as we've heard from Councillor McKeon, who moved refusal, that it certainly would. And so we do need to take that into consideration as well. The final point that does worry me is, you know, the applicant was, in fairness, he was honest, and he did say there is the potential to extend the operation. I wrote it down, can never be excluded. So we're told 14 to 15 years. We know about the nature of the industry. It could potentially be a lot longer than that. How many of us, officers and members, would still be here in 14 years to consider an additional application, as we have seen throughout history on this land? And so when you actually put that in context with the fact that, and it is in the public domain, there are 3 retrospective applications connected with this, it does show a planning creep that has been going on this land for a long period of time. I think, Chairman, that there are strong arguments about protecting the openness of the Greenbelt. There are strong arguments to say that this permitted development would have such a detrimental effect on the Greenbelt, it can be resisted in policy. And I think there are equally strong arguments, although not backed up as strong by policy, but clearly they are relevant about the noise and traffic disturbance to local residents who have endured this for a long period of time. And I think on that basis, I'm sensing there's nobody spoke in favour yet, but I think on that basis, if it is refused, the planning authority has very good grounds to back up its refusal. And so I'm very happy to support Councillor McKee in moving refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Peel. Councillor Hayes, please.
Thank you, Chair. The last few meetings, we've nibbled away at the Greenbelt quite a lot. I remember an oldie in Bromley Cross. I remember a school in the Farnworth area. And of course, we've had the big industrial site on Wingates. And people have argued in that case that it's Greenbelt, but it's not particularly valuable land. Well, Greenbelt's Greenbelt. But I would argue that the location of this site is not just Greenbelt, it's also valuable landscape, very valuable landscape for recreation and for the whole setting of the town of both Horwich and Bolton. So it is valuable. Now, it's a next door ward to my own, and I know that there's great deal of similarities between the two. Nobody's arguing that this will not harm the Greenbelt. Everybody's accepting it will harm the Greenbelt. The argument is it acceptable harm or not? Very clearly, I believe it is not acceptable harm. You've got an SSSI very near to it, and there will be some effect on that. You've got the lorry journeys which have been talked about, and anybody who travels down Chorley Old Road into Horwich or along Walkerfold Road in my ward, which is used quite a lot by these lorries as well, know that those roads have suffered a great deal. How much of that is due to the Armstrong lorries is always going to be a matter of argument. There's no doubt that the weight and sometimes the speed of those lorries causes a lot of problems to the roads. The chair mentioned the possibility of a weight restriction. We know with these, so a lot of these restrictions, the problem again is enforcement. It's very difficult to enforce weight restrictions. It takes up a lot of officer time to do it, and it's not always practicable. We've got the problem of enforcement mentioned by ward councillors. I don't know the detail such as in the way that they do, but there's been a lot of queries about the hours of operation. Sorry, somebody else talking, Chair? I'm getting another voice. We get a lot of comments about the hours of operation, the air quality not being monitored properly, the number of journeys not being monitored. I wouldn't comment too much on those. I don't live locally, not that locally. The councillors do, and they believe there's a real problem with it. I think, totally opposed to this. I think it would not be accepted. Several people have made the point already that officers are mentioning temporary harm, but the number of extensions of time that's been made to this quarry, it means it can go on for a very long time. And I personally make the value judgment that it is not acceptable harm to the Greenbelt, and I will certainly be supporting refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. The final speaker I've got listed at the moment is Councillor Allen.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. I try to avoid repeating some of the many salient points that have been raised already. I'll be supporting refusal on this application. There are things in favour of this application. For example, the Greater Manchester Minerals policy. Much has been made of the traffic situation. And I agree that Armstrong wagons do create a problem locally. Anyone who's walked up Oldkill Lane, which is a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, will realise that 40 tons of stone in an Armstrong's wagon coming down the hill is a scary sight. It really is. But the application does say that there'll be no increase in the number of wagons. So it's probably not right to include that as one of the reasons for refusal. What is right to be included is the things that have been mentioned already, and that's the undue harm, the excessive harm to the greenbelt, both in terms of landscaping, of outlook, and the general characteristics of the area. It doesn't seem right to me that the quarry can keep expanding continually. I would like to see some of the workings that are existing restored before there's an expansion. In other words, it should be a rolling thing, really. But to my knowledge, not a lot has been restored so far. I think there's quite a bit of waste tipping gone on, but I'm not aware that much has been restored. So I kind of share councillors' views that Armstrongs often cannot be trusted. That isn't, of course, a material planning consideration, but what is a material consideration is the undue harm to the greenbelt, and for that reason alone, I'll be supporting refusal. Thank you, Chair.
I thank Councillor Allen. I've had no other speakers indicating, so before I bring Mr. Allen in, could I just make one or two comments? I think we've heard a lot about the impact on the landscape and the protection, the need to protect the SSSI and the green belt. And having walked up there only the other day, going up for Two Lads Hill, I can't see that you can in any way ameliorate the impact of this, even with the bond and the measures proposed. I think the site will still be highly visible from Two Lads and further up the Television Mast Road. I think I share the view that this is not a temporary application, in the sense that 15 years will see out a number of members around this committee, not wishing anyone any harm at this point. But I remember well over 40 years ago, we talked about temporary use of quarries, and all that's happened is expanded over all of those years. The other thing that I do think is material, and I would like us to consider it as a reason for refusal, is that in the time I was walking up there on this last visit only early this week, the constant movement of vehicles and the dropping of heavy stone into wagons is incessantly there in the background. I do think that in terms of the open area, but also residents in the area, there is a real issue. And I also think that we ought to already be considering, but certainly if members were managed to approve this one, which I get the feeling is not the case, we ought to be looking at the opportunity to impose a weight restriction on Chorley Old Road from its junction with George's Lane through Lee Lane, Winterhay Lane, and through to the Crown at Norwich. But certainly I will be supporting refusal for those reasons in particular. Could I just invite Mr. Allen, please, the planning officer, to comment before I take the vote?
Okay, Chair, just wait for the thank you,
Yes,
Chair.
indeed.
Thank you. Just picking up on some issues that some members have raised, and I'm not sure whether Nicola Raby would like to comment on in terms of the procedural aspects. In terms of obviously Councillor McEwen moved a refusal of planning permission, obviously seconded by Councillor Wright, but there does appear to me at least to be some need for clarification in that respect, because obviously Councillor McEwen raised predominantly the issue of impacts of the proposal on landscape character, obviously being detrimental, obviously outweighing the benefits. Obviously Councillor Wright has raised, in addition to landscape, has raised additional items which weren't raised by Councillor McEwen in terms of impacts on the green belts, impacts on the SSSI, impacts on the public highway, in addition to other issues raised by Councillor Peel and Councillor Hayes. Just turning to the impacts on the green belt, it is clear from the officer's report, and just to kind of emphasise that with members, in terms of the impacts of the green belt in the main on the openness of the green belt, officers are of the view that there isn't the openness of the green belt. There is fairly recent case law that states that quarries within the Greenbelt are acceptable, and because they maintain that they don't constitute physical development in terms of buildings, they actually, whilst officers don't say that there won't be an impact on the landscape, I think there needs to be a clear distinction made between impact on openness and impact on landscape, and those are two completely different reasons for refusal. In terms of the triple impact on the potential impact on the triple SI, it is clear from the officer's report that we've consulted with Natural England, and there is clearly no impact on the triple SI. I think we do acknowledge that there is some minor harm, temporary harm, to the biodiversity, ecology of the actual site, obviously given the proposed quarrying operations, and obviously it is also clear from the council's highways engineers, and as stated in the report, if the extension was granted approval, it would operate within the current constraints that have been allowed for quarrying operations. It's not over and above the proposed vehicle movements. It's within the current limits. So in officers' view, that just clearly needs to be made as well. And I think that is all I had to say. I mean, officers would obviously we do recognise it in terms of the balance of in terms of the conclusion that there is moderate harm to landscaping. Obviously, if members consider rather moderate, that is, I can't remember what Councillor Wright said, severe harm, then obviously that is something that potentially could be substantiated, but not perhaps the other matters that councillors raised. So I don't know if Nicola wanted to raise just clarification in terms of the Councillor McEwen's move and Councillor Wright's seconded opinion. Thank you.
Mrs. Raby, do you wish to comment?
Sorry, I'm just waiting for the red box. Thank you. Yes, I think we do need to clarify the reasons for refusal. Quite a number of issues have been put forward by members, some of which have been mentioned once, some have been seconded, but there are, I think Mr. Allen's outlined that there are issues with some of them. I think impact on the highway was mentioned by Councillor Wright, but Councillor Allen picked up that there isn't actually an increase in the wagons proposed. So from what's been said, I don't think we could we'd have evidence to put forward a reason for refusal in that respect. I think members just need to be clear on the reasons for refusal that they're going to be voting on, if indeed that's the way it's going to go.
Thank you, Mrs. Raby. I'm not going to reopen the debate, but I've got three members with very brief comments, please. Councillor Hayes, Councillor Peel, and then Councillor McKeon, and then I'm going to take the vote. Councillor Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the weight restriction, I suspect from what people have said that this isn't going to be terribly relevant, but if committee is minded to approve this, which I'm sure they won't, with a condition of a weight restriction, I would ask that should also include Walkerfold Road, Colliers Row Road and Old Kiln Lane, because they are also suffering. Thus, hopefully that will not be necessary.
I thank Councillor Hayes. Councillor Peel, please. Brief comment.
Yeah. Chairman, I have the greatest respect for our planning officers who often do a job in very difficult circumstances and aren't there to be popular. And I do appreciate that they are trying to seek clarification from committee about reasons for refusals. I think it will be refused. So I just want to reiterate, I thought I was very clear actually, harm to the openness, the green belt, harm to the character of the Greenbelt, harm to the area of biological, what's the actual term? The biological importance. I accept if officers are advising us that as there are no additional vehicle movements, that highways issues raised by Councillor Wright shouldn't be included, then I would accept that advice. I think Councillor Allen also said something similar. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McKeon, finally, please, brief comment.
Thanks, Chair. Well, as the mover of the motion, I put the emphasis on landscape because I think that is the significant material consideration. I understand the argument about openness of Greenbelt. I think that would have to be a secondary consideration. The landscape issue is the most important. It's mentioned in the report, although Natural England may have eventually said that they were satisfied with the application. The fact that the long negotiations with them indicates to me that they did see problems initially. So I would like to make sure that landscape is the first issue upon which we refuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKeon. We come then to the vote, and it has been moved and seconded this application be refused. So members are therefore, with absolute clarity, members are voting for refusal or against refusal. Mrs. Bailey, can we take the vote, please?
We can, Chair. I'll move to the vote now. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Ayub.
For.
Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor Hornby.
For.
Councillor McKeon.
For.
Councillor Mistry.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Newall.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For refusal.
Councillor Radcliffe.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
The application's refused, Chair.
The application is refused. Thank you very much indeed. We come next to application 9993/20, land at Central Street. Can we make sure, please, that we've got Mr. Sheares and Mr. Litherland as the objector and supporter of this application?
Chair, I've got neither of them at the moment.
We'll take a brief pause whilst we ensure we have them on site.
I think Vicky's been in touch with them.
Yes,
Thank
Chair,
you.
just to let you know that both the objector and the supporter are just going to dial in now.
Thank you very much. I think Mr. Sheares is waiting in the lobby.
Yeah, I've just let them in. I've just admitted Mr. Shires.
Sheares, yeah.
Sheares, sorry. Not sure about Mr. Litherland at the moment.
Have we made contact with Mr. Litherland?
Yeah, I think he's
Yes.
here now.
We admit him.
There with the chair.
Thank you. If you admit him, please.
Yes, Chair, Mr. Litherland's in now.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I just check that The object, Mr. Sheares and Mr. Litherland, the supporter, can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yep, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Can I, for your benefit, outline the process of this meeting? The report has been circulated to members along with late information. It will be presented by the planning officer. I will then invite Mr. Sheares as the objector to speak for 3 minutes and then to take any questions from members. I will then invite Mr. Litherland to speak as supporter and take questions from members, after which members of the committee can ask questions of officers before the matter is open for debate. So can I invite, please, Mr. Mansell to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. This proposal is for 158 new dwellings, consisting of 102 apartments, primarily to the Deansgate and Ridgeway Gates frontages, with the remainder of the site delivering 56 townhouses in a stack formation. Commercial space is proposed to the Deansgate frontage, and transformative improvements are also proposed to the nearby public realm and to the southern bank of the River Crawl, together with new landscaping. The buildings fronting Deansgate are proposed to be demolished. However,
Mr. Mansell, can I just interject for a moment, please? Can we get the right pictures on screen, please?
Yeah, I will pause for a moment while that's resolved.
Mr. McMurray, are we getting the right pictures, please?
I'm trying to load it up.
Thank you.
You struggling, John?
Yeah, it's stuck on a loop. I'm trying to stop the slideshow and try to reload it, and I can't get it to come up.
Okay. Chairman, I suggest that we carry on, and while John tries to sort the issue.
We could please, because I think the picture of material on this one. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Mansell.
Okay, so the buildings fronting Deansgate are proposed to be demolished. However, officers are satisfied that the public benefits of the scheme would outweigh the less than substantial harm caused to the Deansgate conservation area. We are similarly satisfied that the new development fronting Deansgate will be compatible with its surroundings in terms of scale, particularly in relation to the scale of the former Beals building opposite. The degree of compliance with the national standards for internal space is acceptable, and a good majority of the units would have access to their own private amenity space, either to the rear or in the form of balconies or roof terraces, with the remainder having access to shared spaces with improved access to public open spaces already existing within Bolton Town Centre and to Queen's Park, close by to the west. Turning to the late list, you'll see that the applicants are sought to respond to some issues raised by consultees, and officers have also provided a plan showing the blocks and their lettering, together with an up-to-date list of conditions. In summary, members, having been closely involved with the 3 rigorous design reviews that this development has been subject to, and noting the applicant's positive and creative responses to the issues raised by the design review panel, officers are satisfied that this proposal represents the high quality design required by the Council in Policy TC11, would deliver significant housing supply, town centre activity and regeneration benefits, and are therefore recommending that the application be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Mansell. Could we therefore invite Mr. Richard Sheares on behalf of the Civic Trust, please, to address the meeting? You have 3 minutes to speak, please, Mr. Sheares.
Just let me get a stopwatch. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen and councillors. My name is Richard Sheares, speaking for the Bolton and District Civic Trust, a charity promoting professional excellence in Bolton planning since 1964. We all know for the 21st century, the town centre needs remodelling so that diverse communities can form, thrive and work. We need high density, but high quality is imperative. It must be green, pedestrian friendly, low carbon and resilient to climate change. Overview. This is not climate ready development, but it needs to be. Instead, it is retrofit ready. Both air and ground source heat pumps are indeed feasible. In January, government stated its intentions that 2021 would see an uplift in Part L standards to promote a further 31% reduction in CO2. The ambition here is 10%. We must point out a climate emergency has been declared across all levels of national, regional and local government, and currently the prognosis is dire. Secondly, wisdom from the pandemic is good access to nature and green space within future residential developments is essential for health and well-being. With its pathetic token of green infrastructure, this wisdom is ignored. The key points: 1, demolition. This development destroys many of the remaining buildings of merit in the northwest sector of the town centre. Sweetens date from the 1700s. The old warehouse on Ridgeway Gates is a robust structure and could easily be incorporated. It represents the remaining heritage of this site that could be salvaged. On the residential, again, this fails to address basic principles and tactical needs of how viable communities can be created for the town centre. A diverse demographic is essential. 3, to be optimal, the degree of high density depends upon context, site context. This confined site looks inward for vistas. Generally, thus quality and natural light exposure of bounded courtyard areas are crucial. A light, airy green sanctuary for community is essential. Design context, with so little multifunctional green space, even for the modest community gardening, key to fostering community interaction. There is no evident sun path analysis also to prove natural lighting and shade exposure. So, not optimized high density, too greedy in number of dwellings and far too mean by its hard surfaces. It will attract a narrow age group prone to tenancy turnover, not the needed diverse demographic for community. 4, green space is too shaded and tokenistic. The Civic Trust knows green infrastructure costs. A further 0.5% of project costs here could transform this scheme, including living walls, being essential for climate resilience and for health and well-being. Lastly, 5, continuing to approve these barren, high-density, anti-community developments, ones only retrofit ready for climate, means our town is not progressing. This is not the climate resilient, community ready 21st century development.
Mr. Sheares, you've had 3 minutes, please. Finish. 1 sentence, please.
Finished. 4 seconds over. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I ask, are there any questions to Mr. Sheares? Thank you very much. Can I therefore invite Ms. James Sutherland, supporter of the application, please?
Good afternoon, members. My name is James Liveland. I'm Planning and Development Manager at Place First. So the proposed development is a result of over 2 years of work with officers, which has included several design changes. We're therefore delighted to be in this position with a strong officer recommendation to what we are confident will be a transformational development within this part of the town centre. The development represents an investment of over £25 million. As an award-winning build-to-rent specialist, Place First is committed to an accelerated delivery of this new community of 158 homes. Works can commence as soon as next month, with the new Deansgate block completed by the end of next year. We want to set a standard for the highest quality rental product within the town centre. We believe Bolton Town Centre has great potential coming out of COVID-19, and Place First want to play a part in delivering it. The development has undergone extensive pre-app and design review with Places Matter, the Council and the Civic Trust. Members' briefings have also taken place based on earlier versions of the scheme. In response to these consultations, the density and scale of development has been reduced from 230 homes, and all unit sizes have increased to meet the nationally described space standards. The proposed development includes extensive public realm improvements, including a new public square, works to the River Crow, and significant highway improvements. The development will also include a new cycle hub on Deansgate for residents and visitors. Our award-winning design team, including architects Levitt Bernstein, have created a development which responds to its environment and history with originality and innovation. Whether that be the physical references to the historic Velvet Walks or the special moment created through the new Ginnel of Chapel Alley, all serve to generate interest and a genuine sense of place. The improvements to the River Crow have been designed to be incorporated into the Council's wider Crow improvement works. This includes a river walk, canal widening, and extensive landscape treatments. Such work has been welcomed by the Environment Agency. We hope that the proposed development will act as a catalyst for further intervention along this section of the Crow, which would deliver a major environmental uplift. We've been really pleased with the responses received from statutory consultees. No statutory consultees have objected to the development. We are naturally disappointed with the response of the Civic Trust and have provided a detailed response, a summary of which is available on the late list, which responds to lots of the previous comments robustly. We do, however, thank the Civic Trust and Places Matter in particular for their constructive feedback throughout the design process, which has really helped improve the development. The benefits of this development are significant and wide-reaching, as detailed within the officer's report, and accord fully with national and local planning policy.
Mr. Litherland, you've had your 3 minutes, please. One sentence,
I would like to
please.
conclude by thanking members for the opportunity to speak and welcome any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got 2 questions noted thus far. Councillor McKeon.
Mr. Litherland, Mr. Shiraz, when he was giving his presentation, used a very striking phrase, which was retrofit ready. Obviously, he was referring to various ways of heating the buildings that you're going to put up there. Would you comment on that phraseology he used, and also his critique of the kind of community that will be created by the development you have in mind? Could you comment on the kind of tenants you might expect, and if possible, what kind of length of time a tenant might be expected to stay? Thank you.
Certainly, thanks for that question. Obviously, I don't recognise the term retrofit ready in this development. This development's been informed by a lot of sustainability advice. We've gone beyond the council's standards as 10% above and beyond building regs. There are a number of sustainable principles to the development. When you look at it's the fabric used in the development, its air tightness, electric source of fuel, MVHR ventilation, the roof will be the PV panels on the roof. So this is a low carbon sustainable development. On community point, it's actually a mixed community that we're trying to promote here. We've done a lot of research over the years on this, and we've changed the target demographic slightly. So we're looking at young professionals, couples, sharers, downsizers, and in the townhouses in particular, even young families. Place First pride itself on mixed communities. I think some of you may know the developments we do, so that is where we are in terms of this community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peel, please.
Thanks, Chair. I know there are comments in the late list about this, but one of the particular concerns raised by Civic Trust is possible conversions of several buildings, but in particular any of the buildings on the frontage of Deansgate, some of which I have to say are more worthy than others of retention. But what consideration has been put towards the retention of some of the more worthy buildings here that could be blended in to a new application, and the reasons why those were rejected? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that question. We've been looking at this site and developing the plan for a large amount of time, so naturally we have looked at some of these buildings before, but ultimately we've been guided by Bolton Town Centre strategy and the master plan framework, which goes alongside that strategy. And for this site, which is in an intervention area, it needs comprehensive development to include, and that's what we've followed, that lead from the council's own town centre strategy and master plan framework for this site in particular. On top of that, I know that retaining one or a couple of the buildings ad hoc would result in an unviable development, and also a lesser development to the one which is proposed. And if you can get the images up, hopefully you'll be able to see the nature of the developments proposed and the length of detail the architects have gone into to get something which is going to be really special for this part in the town centre.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Morgan, please?
Thank you, Chair. Question to the supporter. Obviously, you've touched on it briefly about other developments that you've been involved with across the country. Can you give us a couple of examples of those? What the take-up and demand for those developments once built was, and also about once the build's complete, can you tell us what role you take in managing and maintaining and letting these properties? Thank you.
Thanks for that question. It gives me an opportunity to raise some of one of our most famous developments is the Wells Street in Liverpool, which you may have heard of, which is a real national regeneration success, a community of 300 plus homes. But we have developments across the northwest, northeast, Midlands. We promote mixed communities. I think one point about tenancy and length of tenancy, which I didn't pick up before but is linked to this question, is we want our residents to stay as long as possible. Resident churn does not help our business whatsoever, so we need to keep them happy. And really, for a development like this, we'd be looking at 3 years plus for a resident would be a really good place to be. And on your point, if you can the point about ongoing management, we'll have a property manager dedicated who will be at the site 5 days a week. They will ensure that the site is well managed to make sure that there are, any issues like traffic or antisocial behaviour, parking, bin storage, etc. is all addressed. They'll also manage the lettings process as well. So it's very much a hands-on management. That's what is part of our USP, I suppose, as a top quality landlord.
Thank you very much. There are no further questions, Mr. Lidland. Thank you. Going to open the matter for the debate. Councillor Newall, please.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I will support this application today, and out of all the town centre plans that we have, this is the one that, on seeing the original plans, excited me the most. It's major work for Bolton Town Centre, and on the face of it, it's a very, very green enterprise. And the thing that's most beneficial about this application, in my opinion, is the reintroduction of the river into the town centre and all that that brings with it. And to put in place a habitat to accommodate the wildlife that we've lost through industry over the years, it's such a good thing to do. But when you read paragraph 112, it's a bit wishy-washy, it's a bit half-hearted. We have recommendations there from Greater Manchester Environmental Unit and the RSPB talking about specific bird bricks to put in place to encourage the very birds that we want back, the river birds. And our response to that is that, just let me read it, Council is not currently in a strong policy position to require specific numbers of bricks. Well, we should be. We should be more proactive on this part of the application. It's details like this that will make the difference in the rollout of this kind of initiative. We need the responses that council needs further details. Well, go and get them. Get the details for the bricks that you need for this kind of work. We should be more proactive with things like this. And it's like the other thing that jumped out at me with this was the matter of green roofs. And it says in the report that we're not having green roofs because we're having, for want of a better word, solar panels on the roof. That's fine because that's very green. But could we not accommodate some green roofs somewhere? You know, it seems to me that we're falling short on the detail on this, and it's the detail that will make this quite spectacular if it comes off. So I would urge our planning officers to go back to paragraphs like 112 and see what they can do better, and see, you know, how much proactivity we can put in this with working with the developers to make this, you know, a really special area of Bolton Town Centre. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Peel, please.
Thanks, Chair. If Councillor Newell was moving a condition that, in particular, in terms of the bird bricks, which I admit I am not massively au fait with, then I think she makes a reasoned argument, and it doesn't sound to me on the face of it like something that would cause the developer a problem. So if perhaps she'd come back later if she is moving that, I certainly, on the face of it, would support it. On the issue of the application, I don't think members can underestimate how massively important this is for not just the town centre but for the borough. The knock-on effects everywhere are huge. It is a majorly important intervention zone in the town centre, and you know, let's just keep repeating the message to continue to correct the doom and gloom merchants. We are not, the council's policy is not to try to reinvent something that we've lost. The old town centre is long gone. Time has moved on. The council isn't attempting to reinvent something we've lost. What the council's attempting to do, which has full support, is to replan how a town centre works. And one of the key components of that, which is essential because nothing else will work otherwise, is to bring in much needed new town centre living. It's only when you get new town centre living, and you know, across the scale, thousands of new people, hopefully, if everything goes off in the other areas, moving into Bolton Town Centre, because with that, people develop their own communities. And with developing their own communities, they revitalise the local existing retail offer and specialist shops offer in particular, as well as the cultural sector, as well as the hospitality sector, to have a thriving daytime economy and a mixed family orientated evening economy. None of that is going to happen as long as the town centre remains as it is, which is somewhere that people come into during the day and then leave, and then come into again in the evening and then leave. We need to have these communities living in the town centre. It's of vital importance, and the council's been working on this for years under the previous administration that I was a part of. You know, we set the ball going in terms of putting up money up front in order to bring these developments to fruition. We've got to stop talking about this, and we've got to get it done. I absolutely understand where the Civic Trust are coming from. I think the Civic Trust has such a vital role to play in Bolton. Their comments should always be taken seriously. They should always be listened to, even if ultimately things are discounted. They have to be taken seriously because they have a role to play. They are providing a balance to other people who might just want to rush forward without thinking about aesthetics, for example. But as I always say to the Civic Trust and all my time on planning, is sometimes beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There has to be a balance between preserving buildings that are worthy of preserving, that certainly receive the backing of historic England, and not being afraid to embrace modernity, which thriving town centres like Bolton, that isn't an historic market town, doesn't have tourism for that reason, needs to embrace modernity. I don't have a problem with scale and size. I think the two front buildings that face Deansgate are in keeping. I think the buildings as you go back are much smaller. One of the most exciting things about this as well, again to dispel myths that are often put about by people who don't know what they're talking about, it's not a Manchester type scheme. These are not big high-rise apartments for young professionals. I'm very pleased with this application in that it's a mixed development of different housing types. I'm quite satisfied that somebody could move in to a home that suits them in the early 20s, have a family, move into a different home on the same site, years from then retire and move into a different home on the same site, because I think it covers all generations. And I'm also very happy that the recommendations from the council a few years ago that the Crowell Valley must be incorporated into these developments, and that has been taken on board, and that is happening as well. So yes, there are some major changes. People don't like change, but sometimes you have to embrace it in order to move on. I think the massive benefits outweigh some of the limited harm, and that's not to say I don't take on board what the Civic Trust say. My only hope is that the developers do get on with it, you know, because we have been here before. They do get on with it, and I only hope that the other designated areas of Bolton Town Centre also begin to start moving, because the people of Bolton want to see boots on the ground and cranes in the sky. And until that happens, Chairman, large sections of our population will always treat these plans with scepticism. And so I'm very happy to support the application, and wish and hope it happens sooner rather than later. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor Morgan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think Nick just touched on this. This site has been knocking about for at least 10, if not 15 years, and it's surfaced as a Selfridges, as a Debenhams, as a major Tesco site, and now we are where we are. But I think Nick touched on it. This is an absolutely transformational development that could really kickstart what all of us want to see is the rebirth of our town centre, because it's never going to be what it was before. There's no longer a requirement for that town centre shopping as it was, and this is the future of our town, the people living in it, not just going in it during the day, being there for the nighttime economy, etc. And I think really what's really important about this development as well is the speed of the delivery, the ambitious. They want to crack on. I think the applicant said that they could start developing this site next month, you know, with an ambition to deliver it within a matter of a year and a half, 2 years. I really like the sort of having the public square, and Councillor Newell and Councillor Peel both touched it in the fact that we're going to reintroduce the River Croll back into our town centre as for leisure use. So I'm absolutely more than happy to support this development along with my colleagues, and I wish the developer every luck and success, and may this be the start of a very bright future for Bolton Town Centre. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you. I've got 3 further speakers indicated. Councillor Sherrington, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would like, first of all, to say that I welcome the fact that this is going to happen in Central Street. And I mean, we have waited. I mean, taking on board what Councillor Morgan's just said, we have waited a long time for this, and I am really pleased that they are opening up the River Croll, and the walkways are going to be there, all these sort of things that we asked for years ago. The only disappointment I've got with this application is that I feel that the facade on Deansgate has got a lot to be desired. It's the typical Billy Bootcase type thing that you see in a lot of the towns, where the first time I ever saw anything like this was when the wall came down in Germany, and I went across to East Germany, and this was the kind of thing that was produced over there, and which now has taken on the major sort of buildings in the cities around the country. And I do feel that it could have had a little bit more character in it, in that facade. It's right opposite Whitaker's, which is a beautiful Tudor style building. You've got a little bit just further down, which will the walkway at the back will go past, is the old post office, which is a beautiful stone building, and I just feel that it could have actually had a bit of style to it. In other words, I'm always a little bit worried that if we were bothered about money and all the rest of it and what have you at the turn of the last century, then we could have finished up with a town hall that could have looked like this, because quite simply it was only because they thought about the character and the beauty of the building that we finished up with a lot better building, something like this. So I do feel, because it is in the town centre, I do feel that the town centre needs a little bit more thought, because quite simply you've got people coming into the town, and this is one of the gateways where they come in and you know, they look at the buildings, and that is one of the reasons that attracts people to a town, is what the buildings have to offer, you know, whether they've got something that's a little different than going to another town. And so the thing is, I've got this great difficulty now, because quite simply I want to support this because I've waited so long for it. But on the other hand, I do feel that it needs to be taken away and something done with this frontage that's opposite Whitaker's. So I do feel that I'm going to propose that that we don't go ahead with this at this stage, and although I really want to, so I'm in a great difficulty here of wondering which way to jump on this. So so anyway, there I am. The thing is as well, Chair, the new planning guidelines that's come through has said that we should be looking at beauty as well on planning, not just, size and so on. And I do think that there could have been a bit of beauty put in here that's not happened. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and help Councillor Sherrington out here because I'm going to move that we defer this application. Let me try and explain why. The frontage on Deansgate, which is the first part of this development that's going to be built, is important, as Councillor Sherrington said. This is within literally a stone's throw of the town hall. So this is the inner core of the town centre. Some of the buildings that we're losing here are hundreds of years old. Sweeton's bookshop, I think the Blue Boar is pretty ancient as well. And I'm not suggesting we keep those for a moment, but this is the inner core. And I think developers need to be aware that what you build on Deansgate will be the future history. You are not just building blocks of flats here, you are literally building history that hopefully in 100 years we can look back on, or our dependents can look back on and say, that's a beautiful building, it's worth keeping. So I agree with Councillor Sherrington that there's a lot of fairly bland brickwork and render, and I just think something a bit more imaginative could be done. We've waited, as Councillor Peel and Councillor Morgan have said, we've waited many years for this moment, and I'm pretty confident that this will go ahead, and I absolutely support it as a scheme. It's a major contribution to our housing supply numbers, but we've waited years for this, and I think waiting another month or two is not unreasonable. I'd really like developers to have another look at this frontage on Deansgate and perhaps see what could be done. A couple of other issues. We, as part of this development, lose the fairly big car park at the back of the Victoria Halls, and I think we retain 20 spaces. It would be nice if those 20 spaces were reserved for disabled, particularly disabled who are attending concerts at the Victoria Halls. I'm very impressed with the rest of the development. It's the kind of variety of housing that I've long asked for. It isn't all one-bedroom studio flats, which I think we've become too familiar with. There is a variety of housing here. And as I think the supporter said, they hope to attract, a cross-section of society. So that's good. Much on the future success of the development, much will depend on the management of the site. So I'm fairly relieved to hear the supporter say that they are really good at management. And I hope that turns out to be true. There's quite a lot of open space in this development of trees and things like that, and that's good, but it does need to be maintained, as do the the walkways and the ginnels and things like that. So hopefully that will be okay. So I see a lot of positives in this development. As Councillor Sherrington said, I really want to support this, and I'm sure eventually I will, but for the sake of another month or two, I'd really like developers to have another look at the frontage on Deansgate. So I'm going to move deferral, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. We do need development in Bolton Town Centre because it's just got so run down and just worn out. But I would tend to agree with the objector in preserving some of our older buildings in Bolton. such as Sweetens and the Blue Boar, because they date back from the 1700s, and I'm not too keen on getting rid of all the old buildings and getting rid of the past. We can incorporate it into this new development. Take the Manning Scythe, that dates back to 1251. Would councillors propose we knock that building down and build a McDonald's or Costa Coffee there instead? We do need new developments, and it would be nice if we could incorporate key buildings of historical value into the new design. At the moment, this design just looks like any other built-up area, which is soulless, it lacks imagination, and for a modern building, we could be a lot more ambitious, really creative, like living walls. There's you get flowers and grass on the walls, anything. More environmental issues built into this development. So I agree with Councillor Allen. I would like this to come back because this is going to be around for a long time, and I'll be happy to second him on deferral of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Newell, do you want to come back with a brief comment, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was just on the point that Councillor Peel picked up about conditions, a condition. I'm happy to move a condition being put on that we take on the recommendations of both the GMEU and the RSPB with regards to the type of bird bricks that are used. And I'd just like to say, I wouldn't want anybody to think I was critical of this application, because I'm not. I think it's fabulous. I think it's one of the best ones of the 5 that we've got. So I do want to see it succeed, but I think it's the small details are very important in something like this. So I would like to move that, but I think perhaps Mr. Mansell is going to address that point now, maybe. But okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we have before us a proposition of approval with that additional condition and an amendment to defer. Mr. Mansell, do you want to comment, please, before we put the vote?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On the matter of the, so I'll just pick up Councillor Newell's point about biodiversity. So there is a condition on there that I've worded to allow for some flexibility to bring the RSPB's comments into account. So I changed our standard condition for biodiversity improvement, so it does ask for the consideration of bat or swift boxes within the development. The general principle is we should be achieving biodiversity improvements on all sites. Given that it's a surface level car park, I have to say that I don't think the developer's going to struggle to get better biodiversity than is currently being proposed. But the condition allows for a degree of flexibility on that. Should it be, and for somebody, for perhaps an ecological specialist to give really detailed recommendations as to what should be the right way forward. But obviously the developer wants to know that we consider the development acceptable in principle before they will get an ecological consultant to come up with that level of detail, in the same way that we do with landscaping, or that we consider materials by way of a condition. So I am satisfied that that condition allows for maybe it will come back and that it will be bat and swift boxes as the RSPB observed, or green roofs. So I'm satisfied the condition gives that degree of flexibility, and obviously the developer's here to hear and has heard members' views on that point. On the elevations, I just want to be satisfied that members are looking at rather than the sketch proposal that really just shows the development in its context. Page 85 of the full report does show the elevational details, which, in my view, does have a degree of detailing and decoration within them. So we've got the brick patterns to reference velvet walks, decorative balconies, and I think a lot our view, and we're consistent with our design and conservation officer and with the design review panel, that really it rests on the quality of the materials here, and provided that and they are indicating a direction of travel towards very good quality materials, and I think that would provide the uplift that members are looking for. The clear steer from the design panel on all three proposals was not overly decorative frontages. The steer from them was simple, bold buildings, but with quality materials, and I have to say that we agree with them on that particular point. So we are satisfied that the elevations as currently proposed are consistent with policy TC11 at that point.
Thank you very much indeed. We therefore have a proposal for approval with that condition strengthened, and an amendment that the matter should be deferred. I will therefore take the amendment first. The members are voting for or against deferment. Can we take the vote, please?
Absolutely. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Ayub.
Against.
Councillor Connor. Councillor Connor. I'll come back to Councillor Connor. Councillor Dean.
Sorry, the line wasn't very clear when Councillor Walsh proposed the vote.
We are voting for or against deferral.
Against.
Councillor Hayes.
Against.
Councillor Hornby.
Against.
Councillor McKeon.
Against.
Councillor Mistry.
Against.
Councillor Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Newall.
Against.
Councillor Peel.
Against.
Councillor Radcliffe.
Against.
Councillor Sanders.
Against.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
Against.
Councillor Wright.
For.
That amendment's lost, Chair.
Right, we're now voting for the substantive for or against approval.
Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Ayub.
For.
Councillor Connor. Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor Hornby.
For.
Councillor McKeon.
For.
Councillor Mistry.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Newall.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
That's carried, Chair, and approved.
That application is approved.
Chair, can I just say that Councillor Connor was speaking and trying to get in. Her microphone's not working.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I think we'll have to class that as that she didn't vote on those on that application, because I didn't hear a response during that time. So I'll just class it that she didn't vote for that either way for that application.
It wouldn't have altered the result.
Wouldn't, no, Chair, it wouldn't.
Of either vote. Okay, thank you very much indeed. We come now to application 0959120. This is Lincoln House, and we have a supporter to join us on this one. I've just seen the number coming up. I take it, therefore, that Emma Cochrane is with us.
Yeah, yes, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Just for your benefit, if I can outline the process on this application as with others. The application will be presented by the planning officer, Mr. Mansell. We will then invite you to speak for 3 minutes in support of the application, and invite members who may have questions to pose questions to you, at which point we will then invite members who wish to put off questions to officers to do so before we open the debate. So, Mr. Mansell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so committee will recall the deferral of a previous application for 90 units at this site in July 2019, with concerns raised over the degree of compliance with the national standards for internal space, together with insufficient consideration of planning contributions. That application was withdrawn. This is a new application, a new owner, new applicant and a new design team, and they now propose 88 units. All units would now comply with the minimum national standard at the lower end of the occupancy range, with many complying at the higher end. And given that no method exists of compelling residents to occupy units in accordance with the occupancy ranges within the national standards, we're satisfied that acceptable living conditions would now be provided for all occupants. Noting that also now the 16 top floor apartments would now have access to their own private outdoor amenity space. On the matter of planning contributions, officers note that the national policy of vacant building credit means that there is no requirement for affordable housing on this development. In other circumstances, that will be the largest element of any contribution. For the residual matters, i.e. the matters other than affordable housing, which amount to around £106,000, a viability assessment has been provided and has been independently assessed by an external consultee. This external assessment concludes that whilst there may be some scope for planning contributions, it is difficult to be completely certain to what degree these could be imposed while still allowing for a viable development, due to the absence of comparable transactions in the vicinity of the site. Nevertheless, the applicant is prepared to enter into a Section 106 agreement to contribute a minimum of £70,000, so around 2/3 of what the council's policies would currently require, and he's happy to be flexible as to the objective of those contributions. In other words, is fairly relaxed about what the council would then spend that money on, but also to enter into a clawback arrangement whereby any additional profit would be shared with the council up to the maximum required by the council's policies of £106,000. Officers note the other improvements over the July 2019 scheme in the form of alterations to the external materials, providing a less strident appearance to the building, together with new planting on the frontage. We also, as we've done previously, note the significant benefits to housing supply, the sustainable location, and we're therefore recommending that members delegate the decision to the director to allow the legal agreement to be entered into. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mansell. Can I invite, therefore, a supporter, Emma Cochrane, please, to address the committee? Remind you, you've got 3 minutes to speak, and then take any questions from members, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. Many thanks for the opportunity to present to you this afternoon. My name is Emma Corcoran from One Heritage Group plc, and we are the owner and developer of the site. We are here today to present to you this application for the conversion of the existing Lincoln House from office to residential use. As set out in your officer's report, the application relates to Lincoln House, which is an existing 5-storey office development constructed approximately 10 years ago. The building has remained unoccupied since its construction. The property is located on Nelson Street and is half a mile or approximately 12 minutes walk from the edge of Bolton town centre. The site is well served by public transport, with the majority of Greater Lever and Farnworth buses passing the site regularly. The application seeks the change of use of all 5 floors of the building to form 88 new homes, including a mix of studio, 1-bed, 2-bed and 3-bed apartments. The car park to the rear of the site will be reconfigured to provide a 52 car parking spaces, in addition to 20 cycle spaces and a dedicated bin storage area. By way of background, the applicant, Lincoln House Property Development, is owned and operated by One Heritage Group plc. We are a Manchester-based residential developer, and we acquired the site from its former owner last year. One Heritage Group plc were therefore not involved in the previous application for the conversion of this building, which was brought to Planning Committee in July 2019 and deferred due to concerns raised by the members. Notwithstanding this, the planning history of the property has now been noted in preparation of this application, and the design team has sought to positively resolve the issues previously raised by members, along with planning officers. This has included proposed works to improve the overall appearance of the site and the building, including new landscaping at the front of the building, perimeter planting within the rear car park, and the replacement of existing cladding system with a refined render, resulting in a softer, more residential appearance overall. The apartment mix and layout has also been revised following comments from members in relation to apartment size. We can confirm that all the apartments now achieve the minimum targets outlined within the National Space Standards. The apartments on the fourth floor of the building have also been updated to include private balconies. Whilst resolving the concerns raised previously has been challenging, given the constraints associated with the conversion of an existing building, we are confident that the refinements made have resulted in a significantly improved scheme. To conclude, we therefore think this proposal will result in the sustainable and efficient reuse of a vacant building, which is located in a highly accessible location.
One sentence, please, if you could. One further sentence.
All right. Should planning permission be granted today, the project team will seek to start on site this month, and we have procured a contractor to undertake the works. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Got questions to you, please, if we may, from Councillor Morgan.
Thanks, Chair. I think we're all sort of very conscious of cladding and render in the current climate. Obviously, you as the applicant have said you're looking at softening the cladding to make it more residential looking. Can you confirm that the cladding that's already on the building is fire safe to the current regulations, and that any new cladding that's going to be added to the building will obviously be compliant as well?
Yeah, so the existing cladding on the building, it's aluminium composite material, and it is potentially hazardous from a fire perspective. And under building regs, because the building is below 18 metres, we don't actually need to replace it. However, as a company, we feel we have a moral obligation to change it, and so we will be replacing it with a material which is not hazardous for fire.
Thanks. Would you be happy for that to be conditioned to any approval if it is approved?
Yeah, I believe that will be acceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ayub, please, Vice Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question is about we are a supporter of clean air. Have you thought about putting an electric charging point in the building? Thank you.
There are no plans at the moment to include any electric charging points. This could be something that's looked at, but we feel that the type of occupier there, they might not be having electric cars at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much, but that's for the future, you see.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Newall, please.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned about car parking and your car park situation. Could you tell me, please, is this car park going to be locked or is it going to be open?
It will be locked. There'll be an access gate which only the residents will have ability to open. So it will be a safe and secure car park.
Right. What will you do about emergency access for emergency vehicles?
I'm not sure of the exact plan currently, but I can find out for you.
Right, thanks. I mean, I don't suppose, I'm thinking about if there was a fire, God forbid, or, you know, emergency access was needed, a fire engine could probably go through the grates, but
Yeah,
but it'd be not sausage for paramedics or somebody in a small van that, you know, like the kind of vehicles that paramedics use if they were called to the premises. I was wondering whether you had like universal access codes or something.
One Heritage will be managing the property, and so if there is an issue, then we will be on call 24 hours a day, so we can provide access if required.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ayub raised a point which I was going to ask. Is about electric charging points. It's good that this development has 52 spaces, plenty of parking spaces, which is quite unusual for new developments to include parking spaces. But it is disappointing where they said that they predict that the residents will not have electric cars, you know, which I feel a bit odd. They've included all these parking spaces, but so they are expecting them to use cars, but non-electric. So I would ask the applicants, would they reconsider the point of electric charging points, because it is important. Thank you.
Yes, it is something we could consider.
Okay. Thank you very much. No further questions. So can we move to question to officers, please? I've got one indicated from Councillor Morgan.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. I mean, the applicant has answered my question with regards to the cladding, but if we are minded to approve this application, then I would like that to be added as a condition, Martin, if possible.
I'm gonna. The matter of fire safety is primarily one for the building regulations, and I think your officers are always going to advise you not to try and replicate conditions that that cover other, other control regimes. I'm going to have to. I think we'll have to give that some thought. I think we're going to have to take the view that we hear what members are saying, and then come to a decision, with as officers as to whether that is something that would meet the tests of the of national policy. But I do hear what members are saying in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Mansell. We come then to the debate. I'm going to invite Councillor Ayub, please, Vice Chairman, Ward Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I recall this site application determined by the Planning Committee in 2018, which was approved, and similar application was deferred in 2019. This application for a 88 flat conversion, even though I'm not in favor of flats in Grey Lever, because of the reason given in history of the previous refused application in 2014, undelegated powers, one type of occupant without acceptable safeguard in place, as the building is in close vicinity of problematic area. We need some sort of assurance of reference checks, as Bolton Hall are no longer involved in this application. Issue of the short of car parking is not relevant, as the site is half a mile from the edge of town centre and the train station. Site is well served by the public transport. Highway engineers have raised no objections. Internal layout of the flats meets the national standards. If this was an application for the new development, I might have had a different view. But as the building has already constructed and never been used for its approved purpose, it has been vacant for over 10 years or so. I have read the officer's report thoroughly, and planning policies allows this kind of vacant building to be converted. It will make a significant and positive contribution to council's housing requirement and land supply. I therefore move it for approval, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, please.
Thank you, Chair. I take a slightly different view to Councillor Ayub on this. I think it's quite an ugly building, and I'm glad it's the one on Dean's Gate wasn't sort of a similar design to this. Otherwise, I would have definitely objected to that. I'm going to be consistent with what I've voted on with this in the past. I'll give you the main reason for it is because of the army barracks opposite. I think could propose as could potentially be a security risk having this building looking over the army barracks that also house the Royal Air Force cadets and the army cadets as well. So and I still do think generally it is a substandard dwellings that this application looks at. So I propose that we refuse this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, please.
Thanks, Chair. This is another one that's those of us who have been on the committee for a number of years have been kicking around a while with regards redevelopment and change of use. I had the same concerns as Councillor Dean had with regards to security, but I think we're in a different place slightly when it first came forward a few years ago than we are now. So I still have that concern, but I think it's been noted. With regards to condition of cladding, I would argue that to Mr. Mansell, that a condition of this permission, if we are minded to be changed into residential use, is that it has safe cladding on it. That's us being responsible, a responsible council and a responsible planning committee. And the applicant has already indicated that they feel they would be acceptable to that being conditioned as well. So that's a debate we need to have as a committee, but I would certainly would only be moving the my support for it with that condition.
Thank you. Councillor Peel, please.
Thanks, Chair. If I understood Councillor Morgan correct there, I welcome the officer to come back, but I would support that. It sounds sensible. Yeah, I'm going to second approval. It's always a pity, isn't it, when we lose land that's designated for employment use. But clearly, time moves on, and you have to readjust your plans as time moves on. A building that's sat vacant for 10 years is clearly not wanted, and it may be that that employment zone around Great Lever is quite adequate. The fact that new people would move in here would obviously lead to additional employment demand on any other vacant units in the area. So I'm quite happy with the principle of change of use, which is primarily what this application is. For Councillor Dean to say, well, he doesn't. The building's ugly as it is. That's one of the reasons, Councillor Dean, why we need to do something about it. And obviously, there are alterations and changes going to be made to the building to make it look less ugly. It sounds like a bizarre reason to go against it because of what it looks like at the moment. So I really can't get my head around that. And also this huge red herring about it being in proximity to the barracks. We had this last time. The army itself are not objecting to this. Indeed, if anybody does any research, they will find that most army barracks, okay, I won't say most, but many army barracks and major bases around the country are within residential areas. And that is sometimes quite deliberate because to not have a standoff or distant relationship between the community, the general public and our armed forces. So it is a red herring, and the army have certainly never objected to this on security grounds. So let's put that to bed. I am pleased that we've actually got substantial car parking as well. We all know we've dealt with applications in the past that have said, oh well, you know, it's within such a distance from the town centre and it's on a bus route, so therefore we're not going to provide any car parking at all. This applicant hasn't done that, and I think that's to be commended, because it's always a chicken and egg scenario. You don't force people onto public transport by not providing car parking spaces. You persuade them to use public transport by making it cheap, clean, safe and reliable. That's the answer to that. So I'm very happy with this application. I think you know, these are self-contained flats. It's not a HMO, nothing like that at all. There is a demand, that clearly is a demand out there for young people or young couples, etc., of varying kind of status in life, income and occupation levels, for these types of buildings. This type of living. You know, so I think all the boxes are ticked as far as I'm concerned. I'm very happy to support it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I've got 3 further speakers, but I'm going to bring Mr. Mann in at this point to speak on the issue of the cladding and the condition attaching there too.
Thank you, Chair. As has been mentioned by the officer, the issue of cladding is actually a building control matter, but the applicant has said that they are going to be recladding the building with non-combustible material. I think it's difficult to actually look to condition this as part of the application. We do have a section 106, and I think it's probably safer to actually incorporate that requirement within the section 106 agreement, because it would be safe for the authority to do that. But at the end of the day, this is something that's covered by the building regulations. But if the developer is minded to change that and is happy with that control, we can include it within the section 106 rather than a condition that can be appealed against. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manson. Can I take therefore Councillor Allen, then Newall and Sherrington, please?
Thank you, Chair. Not really a lot to add. I'm happy to support approval. I'm glad that the cladding issue is resolved, albeit not a planning matter. I'm happy with the car parking. I take on board the comment about charging points. Perhaps that's an issue that could be dealt with. I'm fairly happy with this section 106 contributions. I'm a bit dubious as to how we might know whether the expected profit has been exceeded, and therefore whether the applicant will pay more than the base figure of 70,000. But notwithstanding that, one interesting fact is that under the new planning regulations, had this building's never been occupied since it was built, had it been occupied as an office, then I think I'm right in saying that in principle this change from office to residential would have been permitted development, notwithstanding the size of the building. That's clearly the government's intention, but because it's never been occupied, because it's a vacant building, it therefore requires this planning approval. But anyway, that's an interesting point. But I'm happy to support approval, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Newall, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'm happy to support this application, but on the matter of cladding, I must say I am disappointed to hear officers talk about this as being sort of some kind of departmental issue. The issue of the safety of cladding is a matter for this authority, and it's very important that if we approve this application today, that we're absolutely certain that the cladding is safe. I can appreciate that it may be a building regs issue, but this committee needs to be absolutely assured that the cladding is safe. So in that respect, it's an issue for all of us. And secondly, I would like to to get some kind of commitment regarding access for emergency vehicles to this car park as well. I wasn't really quite sure where the applicant stood on that. Maybe I misheard her, but I'd like to get that clarified as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I think for avoidance of doubt, we perhaps ought to be clear about what Mr. Manley suggested, is that actually we have more powers if we get in the 106 agreement, because that becomes a binding agreement between the applicant and the authority. Whereas if it went as a condition, the applicant could appeal and an inspector might take the view that it's not a planning condition. I think that's a fair summary, Mr. Manley, is that correct?
Just wait for me to go red.
Indeed.
Yes, Chair, that is entirely correct. You know, we're not saying it's a departmental issue. It's to do with the regulatory control bodies of the different elements of the authority practice. So it's not dismissing the issue of fire safety, which is obviously a very important one, but it's the mechanism for that is actually a building control mechanism rather than the planning one. So, but I do take your point, and that's why we're suggesting a section 106.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sherrington, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just wait for my red line. There we go. Thank you, Chair. I would like to support this, and I do think what I was going to say was what Councillor Allen said, really, was the fact that if it had been occupied, we wouldn't even be talking about this now, because quite simply, we've got a situation where a lot of office accommodation is going to become residential, and we're going to see more of this, but I don't think it will have to come to planning. I think it will be an automatic that you can go from office to residential. So it's going to be interesting times, and therefore I'll be supporting this. And regarding the gates and fire, from what I can gather is there's a lot of organisations that have gates like this, and that are used by residential people or by office workers or whatever. And if there is a fire, it automatically opens the gate. So that is something that can be done. So it might be something that could put Councillor Ewell's problems to bed. So anyway, I will be supporting this. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. A final brief comment, please, to Councillor Morgan on the 106 agreement issue.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Sim, for that explanation. I have no problem with it being done via the 106 agreement if that's binding, and that's all I was trying to achieve. So thank you for that explanation.
Thank you. Mr. Mansell, do you want to pick up on the 2 points that have been made before we take the vote, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to reassure members on those 2 points. So there are 2 conditions already proposed that I think can be reworded slightly to pick up those issues. So there's a condition on the that requires the security measures proposed by GM Police to be incorporated within the scheme. It seems to me a simple matter just to reword that so that it also addresses the need to also still combine security with access in times of emergency. I don't see a problem with doing that. On the matter of EV charging points, there's another condition that requires the developer to demonstrate that there will be a 10% reduction in CO2 emissions overall. And again, EV charging points can be a way by which that is achieved if that's members' preference for how that can be done. So again, that condition could be changed so that it in a similar way to what we've done with other conditions, that it requires consideration of EV charging points.
Thank you very much indeed. We therefore have got a proposal for approval been seconded. Can we therefore take the vote, please? Mr. Bailey?
Yes, Chair.
Members are voting for or against approval?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Allen.
4.
Councillor Ayub.
4.
Councillor Connor.
4.
Councillor Dean.
Against.
Councillor Hayes.
4.
Councillor Hornby.
4.
Councillor McKeon.
4.
Councillor Mistry.
4.
Councillor Morgan.
4.
Councillor Newall.
4.
Councillor Peel.
4.
Councillor Radcliffe.
4.
Councillor Sanders.
4.
Councillor Sherrington.
4.
Councillor Walsh.
4.
Councillor Wright.
4.
That's approved, Chair, for delegation to the Director.
Thank you very much indeed. Can we come therefore to the final application, which is the siting of 5G telecommunications mast at Mansell Way? And can I draw members' attention to the officer conclusion on the final page of the supplementary information that came out, which I think Mr. Allen will refer to when he presents the report. We should have Councillor Baines with us for this one, and Mrs. Alvarashian, who is an objector.
I'm in that Councillor Baines at the moment.
Councillor Baines is in the meeting.
Is she in the meeting? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, and the objector is waiting in the lobby too.
Right, thank you.
Okay, and can I just say we note apologies, a number of members have got another meeting to attend, and we note their apologies at this point. Mr. Allen, do you want to present the report on this one, please?
Thank you, Chair. The applicant is seeking prior approval for the erection of a 15-metre high monopole together with a wraparound cabinet and associated ancillary works. Members are and also need to be aware that the principal of development is not an issue which the LPA can consider at this moment in time. The only matters for consideration in terms of the application before us today are whether the siting and appearance of the proposal is appropriate. In terms of the appearance, issues such as materials, colour, design, dimensions and the overall shape of the monopole can be considered. In terms of siting, issues including height, topography, the openness, stroke visibility and proximity to residential properties can be considered. Members will note from the supplementary information list that additional representations have been received from local residents and Harwich Town Council. Harwich Town Council raised concerns with regard to the proposal being out of character with the area, it being too close to residential properties, and that there are other more suitable sites than the one proposed today. Members will have read the officer's report and will note that the report, as written, is balanced. Officers have reviewed the officer recommendation as set out within the report, together with recent representations which are contained within the late list, and are now of the opinion that the proposal would be inappropriate due to the siting, scale and proximity to residential properties on Ashburn Close. In addition, whilst there are lampposts on the northern side of Mansell Way, the proposed monopole will be viewed as a very prominent isolated structure which would be out of character with the area, with the larger landscaped area which it would sit. Furthermore, after further discussions with the applicant, it is considered that the applicant has failed to justify why alternative sites within the local area could not be used rather than the application site. Therefore, it is recommended that the members refuse prior approval for these reasons. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Can I invite Councillor Baines, please? Councillor Baines, you've got 5 minutes to address the committee, but you will note the amended recommendation from officers.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. I'm speaking as Harwich and Blackrod Ward Councillor to support the many residents of the Meadows Estate in objecting to this monopole and its associated cabinet structures. I feel there are several reasons, some of those have been mentioned, why this application should be refused. And I base my reasoning on the statutory guidance to which the committee will be familiar with. This is an industrial structure and is being sited very closely to residential properties on Ashburn Close, the Meadows, a relatively short distance of only 9 metres away. Graphics have shown it will therefore be clearly visible from the windows and gardens of these homes. Additionally, it will detract from the overall character and appearance of this area of Mansell Way. And this area is designated green light, footpaths and lighting, and which is a pleasant focal point with shrubs and trees. The man pole would overshadow these. Due to the height and width of the pole, it will dominate and be clearly visible in this area. A similar application concerning Green Lane, Horwich, was heard last year, and the report referred to the monopole being significantly wider than the street lights and would have unshrouded antennae, whilst the cabinets would further add to the volume of the structure. It was therefore considered that the proposal would appear as a much bulkier and intrusive structure that would have a stark utilitarian design compared to the surrounding street furniture and aesthetic. Similarly, with regard to this application, and as referred to, the northern side of Mansell Way has purposely minimal street furniture and lighting, as the council wished to preserve the residential character of this area, and it would therefore become a similar utilitarian and negative design. We have the unsightly service and industrial yards lower down across the road, so it would, in my opinion, be more appropriate for this to be sited there behind the Scant Asda development. This would not be a huge geographical change, nor would it compromise the 5G service, and would serve to achieve the outcome whilst protecting the landscape and well-being of the Meadows area and its residents. I therefore feel there are valid grounds for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. We now have an objector, Fiona Albarrachin. Can I remind you, please, you have 3 minutes to address the committee and then take any questions members may have. And can I also remind you that the officer recommendation is now one of refusal?
Yes, that's noted. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Fiona Albarrachin and I'm a resident on the Meadows estate. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of all residents who have objected to the application. My partner and I are qualified planning professionals and we have direct experience of this type of application. I work for another local planning authority and my partner works for a planning consultancy. In our view, the application should be refused and this decision could be sustained at appeal. Our main points of objection are as follows. Visual impact. The applicant argues that visual impact is minimised due to the street lighting on Mansell Way. This argument is flawed as there are intentionally very few street lights on the northern side of Mansell Way, and those that do exist are only found at junction locations positioned away from the site. The development will therefore not integrate with its surroundings, but will appear as a visually incongruous feature within the street scene, which is significantly higher than surrounding houses, vegetation and street furniture. Furthermore, when viewed from within Ashburn Close, it's not possible to see the street lights on Mansell Way. Instead, the mast will tower above the residential properties and street scene. It appears the applicant has not considered the visual impact from this perspective. Residential amenity. The mast has been sited just 7 metres away from the front elevation of 18 Ashburn Close. This property has a bay window at first floor level. If approved, the residents will have to look out directly over the mast, which will be over 6 metres taller than their property and 75 centimetres wide for the top 4 metres. We do not consider that this relationship can reasonably be considered acceptable. The impact on views from other residential properties, both internally and externally, is also considered to be unacceptable. The development would therefore fail to conserve or enhance local distinctiveness and is incompatible with the surrounding residential area, and for those reasons fails to comply with local and national policy. Our other objections relate to the applicant's justification for the choice of site and for discounting of alternative sites. Figure 4 of their submission attempts to justify why this location is necessary. The applicant's submission states that the mast must be within 50 metres of the nominal location, which is identified at the stadium. The application site is 430 metres away from the stadium, so the figure does not justify the selection of this location. In terms of alternative sites, figure 5 in the applicant's supporting statement intends to show the discounted options. However, options 1 and 2 are not discussed. These sites are further away from residential properties and no information is provided as to why they haven't been considered further. We therefore do not believe that the applicant has adequately demonstrated A, the need for the mast at this location, and B, that no other suitable alternative sites exist. To conclude, I'd like to reiterate our view that this application is capable of being refused and defended successfully at appeal. We hope that members will support local residents in opposing this application, and on behalf of all local residents, we'd like to thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much indeed. I have no questions noted for you, so we move then to the debate, and I'm going to invite Councillor Wright as Ward Councillor, please.
No, no red light yet. Yeah, thank you, Chair. In the original planning officer's report, it was decided to be delegated and quite possibly, chosen to be approved. So I am glad that the planning officers have listened to ward councillors and the public in their objections to this and thoughtlessness of placing this right next to residential properties when there's an industrial estate just across the road, which is more suitable. So it's I am glad that the planning officers have come to a sensible decision on this, and I agree with the current findings, and I would propose refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to take Councillor McKeon next.
Thanks, Chair. I would simply second Councillor Wright's proposal. I think the objector put the case extremely well, and clearly the officers have realised that there are alternative sites and the applicants should have made more effort to find a more appropriate site. So I was second.
Thank you. Councillor Peel, do you still wish to speak?
Yes, Chair, very quickly. I agree the objector put a very good case forward. I indicated to give a massive thumbs up to our officers because we have been having a running battle over many years for all the generations of mobile phone masts where we've argued very strenuously about alternative sites. I'm really pleased that officers on this occasion have said yes, that there are other less obtrusive sites that this mast can go. So very happy to follow the officer recommendation of refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Peel. Councillor Allen, please.
Still waiting, Chair. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to support refusal of this application. I think it's a ill-considered location by the applicant. I think they've given insufficient thought to other locations. This mast could be moved across the road to what's effectively an industrial area. It's the back of all the shops, or better still, a bit further to the west. And towards the roundabout, or just round the corner from the roundabout, where there are no houses at all. I'd just like to talk briefly about money. Historically, telecoms operators have preferred council-owned sites like this grass verge because they were cheaper. And they were cheaper because private landowners, such as farmers and industrial sites, were free to negotiate a deal and often negotiated a deal upwards.
Alan, I'm sorry, we're dealing with this specific application. I understand your wider issues about it, but we are dealing with this application, please.
Oh, okay, Chair, right. I thought it was relevant. But there you go. I'll conclude with that then. I'll just support refusal. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. It has been moved and seconded that this application be refused. Members are therefore voting for or against refusal. Can we take the vote, please, Mrs. Bailey?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Ayub.
For.
Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
I think he's left the meeting. He apologise.
Councillor Hornby.
For.
Councillor McKeon.
For.
Councillor Mistry.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Newell.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
That's been refused, Chair.
The application is refused. Thank you very much indeed. We come then to the final item on the agenda, which are the notices of planning field decisions, report to Director of Places. This is enclosed. Members to note. I don't see any indications to speak. That's been the whole of business. Can I thank you for your attendance and declare the meeting closed? Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
John, can we end the line?